What's going on, melon farmers? D-Mac here, back with another playoff simulation video. This time we are doing the 16 teams from the play-in round that is going to occur very soon. Anyway, very quickly, like and subscribe if you haven't already. There's new videos coming every single day. We are going to take a really quick peek here at the teams that are in the play-in round. First off, we got the Calgary Flames up against the Winnipeg Jets, the Edmonton Oilers up against the Chicago Blackhawks, the Vancouver Canucks against the Minnesota Wild, and the Nashville Predators versus the Arizona Coyotes. In the East, we've got the New York Rangers versus the Carolina Hurricanes, the Florida Panthers versus the New York Islanders, the Montreal Canadiens up against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Columbus Blue Jackets up against the Toronto Maple Leafs. We have changed the settings, so it is not continuous overtime. It is a 5-minute overtime plus a shootout. We are going to simply simulate through these games just to see who's going to win, who the game thinks is going to win. And then after, we're going to compile all this data, and yes, it is best of 5. We're going to compile all this data together, and we are going to put them up against the people that got a bye to the first round of the playoffs to see who we think is going to now take the Stanley Cup with this play-in round. So let's get started. Winnipeg versus Calgary. Sim to next game, I believe, right? Yes, so Calgary takes a 1-0 lead over the Winnipeg Jets. Vancouver versus Minnesota, 1-0 for the Vancouver Canucks. Over in the East now, Columbus versus Toronto in Game 1. Toronto apparently they think Toronto's going to take Game 1 against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Florida versus the Islanders, and it goes to the New York Islanders. Chicago versus the Edmonton Oilers. Game 1 is going to Edmonton. And Arizona versus Nashville, Game 1. Looks like it's going to Arizona. Here we go. Montreal versus Pittsburgh, Game 1 is going to be taken by Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. And now the New York Rangers versus the Carolina Hurricanes in Game 1 is going to Carolina. So, Winnipeg versus Calgary. Now we're getting into the Game 2s here. Calgary is apparently going to take Game 2 as well. Now Minnesota versus Vancouver. It is a 2-0 series lead for the Vancouver Canucks. Wow, all right. So it looks like the age of the Minnesota Wild may be catching up to them a little bit in this one. Toronto versus the Columbus Blue Jackets. Game 2. Game 2 is going to go to the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. Now we got Florida up against the New York Islanders. And it is a tie at 1 between Florida and the Islanders. Edmonton versus Chicago yet again. It is 2-0 Edmonton. Arizona versus Nashville is going to be a 2-0 series lead for the Arizona Coyotes. Montreal versus Pittsburgh, Game 2 is going to go to Pittsburgh, and the New York Rangers versus the Carolina Hurricanes is a 2-0 series lead for the Carolina Hurricanes. Back here at the beginning for game number 3, Calgary versus Winnipeg. It is gonna go to Winnipeg, so they will not say die. They will not go quietly into that good night. Vancouver versus Minnesota, and it's 2-1. The Minnesota Wild won't say die. Toronto versus the Columbus Blue Jackets is a clean sweep, and the Leafs finally make it. Well, technically they didn't make it past the first round, they just made it to the first round, so I guess that one was an epic fail on my part. New York Islanders versus the Florida Panthers is going to go to Florida. Interesting. Edmonton versus Chicago is going to be, a Chicago victory. They stay in it by the skin of their teeth. Nashville versus Arizona, Game 3 is going to Nashville, so they won't say die either. Pittsburgh versus Montreal. It is going to be a 3-game sweep by Sidney Crosby, Jay Gensel, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Carolina versus the New York Rangers is also going to Carolina, so the Carolina Hurricanes do advance to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, Winnipeg versus Calgary, Game 4 is going to be taken by Calgary, who will eliminate the Winnipeg Jets in the play-in round. Vancouver versus Minnesota is going to Minnesota, so we are going to get a Game 5 in that play-in round series. New York Islanders versus the Florida Panthers is another one that's going to a Game 5. Now we've got Edmonton versus Chicago. Can Chicago hang on? No, they cannot, and Connor McDavid and his Edmonton Oilers will be advancing to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Nashville versus the Arizona Coyotes. That one goes to Arizona, and Phil Kessel looking like he is the man in charge here in Arizona. Now, Game 5, Minnesota versus Vancouver. Let's see who's going to take this one. It is the Vancouver Canucks, who are finally advancing to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Florida Panthers versus the New York Islanders. Game 5 is going to go to the New York Islanders. So the teams advancing to the Stanley Cup playoffs in this simulation video are both Albertan teams, the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers, along with the Vancouver Canucks, the Arizona Coyotes, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the New York Islanders, and the Carolina Hurricanes. So we are going to compile this data, and in a couple of days, we are going to do another playoff simulation video with these teams in mind, with the ones who got a bye to the playoffs. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. There's new videos coming every single day. Links in the description for all sorts of social media things if you want more updates or you just want to stay in the loop. Thanks a lot for coming out, and until next time, have a good one, guys.